students and scholars, teachers and trainers, professors and professionals, listeners and learners, those who are listening, watching from the field of arts, science, commerce and engineering. Narendra Modi ji, respected ministers and doctors, reverend fathers and mothers, affectionate sons and daughters, dear friends, it is really nice time, nice place, nice action. Today, now and here, we are discussing our national prejudices. What are our national prejudices? On it we will discuss now, which has been written by Oliver Goldsmith. Dear friends, for the welfare of our nation and society, our rulers, ministers, all suggest us, address us in the form of nationalistic and patriotistic personalities. Oliver Goldsmith, how has he explained his views and ideas? Oliver Goldsmith was born on November 10, 1730 in Kilkenny, West Ireland. His essays are remarkable for their extraordinary power, boldness, and originality. Goldsmith had, in addition, an inimitable vein of humor which constitutes one of the secrets of his charm. He is natural and spontaneous, both in his ideas and language. He is noted for the purity, simplicity, and dignity of his style. His major works include the Vicar of Wakefield. She stoops to conquer the citizen of the world, the bees. On national prejudices, about the essay, as the title suggests, this essay is about national prejudices. What's the real meaning of loving with national, with nation? Means we love our motherland without hate with others. It relates to the company of men involved in discussing the traits of the people of diverse nations of Europe. He is also a part of the company. One of them suffers from negative prejudices towards French, German, Dutch, and Spanish, and entities and entitles English as the best. The essay is coming out of the narrow national boundaries, enumerates the positive aspects of these nations and the negative aspects associated with English. Goldsmith also lashes out at national prejudices and addresses those who believe in it as bastard sprouts. He further adds that prejudices infect mind and influence conduct. He is of the opinion that every man can love his nation without loathing another, means without hating another. Goldsmith's style is remarkable for its exactness and clarity. Dear friends, in this modern time, at this present time, our own citizens, those who are residing abroad or in India, they must think on this view for the recreation, regeneration and reoperation of our nation, for the healthy outlook of our nation. It is very necessary to be followed by everyone, as I am one of that sauntering tribe of mortals. Through the writer, through the author, as per the observation, examination, he explains that he is one of the sauntering tribe of mortals. Means he was also the wanderer earlier in search of finding the truth, who spent the greatest part of their time in taverns. Means almost his life, his time, he spent in inns, in temporary places for residing that were made in Europe, coffee houses and other places of public resort. These public places were common to use in Europe at that time. I have thereby an opportunity of observing an infinite variety of characters. Such places were crowded with the people. Those who were visiting from the different nations of the Europe, and the writer came in contact of them, observed them by their behavior and conduct, by their dealings, to a person of a contemplative turn. A person, by being a person of free thinking, contemplative, is a much higher entertainment than a view of all the curiosities of art or nature. In one of these my late rambles, I accidentally fell into the company of half a dozen gentlemen who were engaged in a warm dispute about some political affair, the decision of which, as they were equally divided in their sentiments, they thought proper to refer to me, which naturally drew me in for a share of the conversation. Amongst a multiplicity of other topics, we took occasion to talk of the different characters of the several nations of Europe, when one of the gentlemen, cocking his hat and assuming such an air of importance as if he had possessed all the merit of English nation in his own person, declared that Dutch were a parcel of various wretches, the French a set of flattering sycophants, that the Germans were drunken sots and beastly gluttons, and the Spaniards proud, haughty, and surely tyrants. But that in bravery, generosity, and in every other virtue, the English excelled all the world. So these were the different observations, levels, brands that were given to the different country people by their specialties. And the author was astonishing while listening such words from the such observation. He was worrying how the different peoples are being branded and leveled by their specialties, because everyone is common and should be treated commonly and humanly. But now, this was the great examination was running in his mind. He was thinking deeply. This very learned and judicious remark was received with a general smile of approbation by all the company. All, but your humble servant, who endeavoring to keep my gravity as well as I could, I reclined my head upon my arm, continued for some time in a posture of affected thoughtfulness, as if I had been musing on something else. and did not seem to attend to the subject of conversation. Hoping by the means to avoid the disagreeable necessity of explaining myself and thereby depriving the gentleman of his imaginary happiness. Dear friends, original real happiness and imaginary happiness, how these two kinds of happinesses are different: artificial and unartificial, natural and unnatural. These can be observed easily, but now the author was compelled to show his happiness. Actually, he was examining, observing, evaluating such persons, those who were not taking a proper decision. They were under decision and thinking deeply. But my pseudo-patriot, but my nationalistic and patriotistic feelings had no mind to let me escape so easily. Not satisfied that his opinion should be without contradiction, he was determined to have it ratified by the suffrage of everyone in the company. For which purpose? Addressing himself to me with an air of inexpressible confidence, he asked me if I was not in the same way of thinking. I am never forward in giving my opinion, especially when I have reason to believe that I will not be agreeable. So when I am obliged to give it, I always hold it for a maxim to speak my real sentiments. Dear friends, now in this present time, our President Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji visits different nations. Some days before, he visited European countries, Denmark, Norway, Switzerland, Germany, Italy, all the nations of the Europe. These were visited by our President Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji by being free from the national prejudices. At that time, he showed the example of being a true, faithful, nationalistic and patriotistic person of our society. I therefore told him that, as per his experiences, the author explains that, I therefore told him that, for my own part, I should not have ventured to talk in such a peremptory strain unless I had made the tour of Europe. Means the author expects that until and unless he will not visit the different countries and will not observe closely by personally visiting their nations, he cannot conclude and say any single result about that personalities. And examine the manners of these several nations with great care and accuracy, that perhaps a more impartial judge would not be scrupled to affirm that the Dutch were more frugal and industrious. Ultimately, he is listening from others, from the judges, means those who are speaking about other persons, and they were declaring that the Dutch were more frugal and industrious. It is the observation, judgment of the writer, of the author, not of the people. So impartially he is judging and saying, the French more temperate and polite, the German more hardy and patient of labor and fatigue, and the Spaniards more sad and Spaniards more staid and sedate than the English, who, though undoubtedly brave and generous, undoubtedly, were at the same time rash, headstrong, and impetuous, too apt to be elected with prosperity, and to the despot in adversity. Please wait some time. Thank you for waiting. I could easily perceive that all of the company began to regard me with a jealous eye before I had finished my answer, which I had no sooner done than the patriotic gentleman observed, with a contemptuous sneer, that he was greatly surprised how some people could have the conscience to live in a country which they did not love and to enjoy the protection of government to which in their hearts they were inveterate enemies, finding that by this modest declaration of my sentiments, I had forfeited the good opinion of my companions and given them occasion to call my political principles in question, and well knowing that it was in vain to argue with men who were so very full of themselves, I threw down my reckoning and retired to my own lodgings, reflecting on the absurd and ridiculous nature of national prejudice and prepossession. Among all the famous sayings of antiquity, there is none that does greater honor to the author or affords greater pleasure to the reader, at least if he be a person of a generous and benevolent heart, than that of the philosopher, who, being asked what countryman he was, replied that he was a citizen of the world. How few there are to be found in modern times who can say the same, or whose conduct is consistent with such a profession. We are now become so much Englishmen, Frenchmen, Dutchmen, Spaniards or Germans that we are no longer citizens of the world. So, so much the natives of one particular spot or members of one petty society that we no longer consider ourselves as the general inhabitants of the globe or members of that grand society which comprehend the whole humankind. Did these prejudices prevail? Only among the meanest and the lowest of the people, perhaps they might be excused, as they have few, if any, opportunities of correcting them by reading, traveling, or conversing with foreigners. But the misfortune is that they infect the minds and influence the conduct even of our gentlemen, of those, who have every title to the affiliation but an exemption from prejudice, which, however, in my opinion, ought to be regarded as the characteristical mark of the gentleman. For let a man's birth be ever so high, his station ever so exalted, or his fortune ever so large, yet if he is not free from national and other prejudices, I should make bold to tell him that he had a low and vulgar mind and had no just claim to the character of a gentleman. Dear friends, this is an international outlook of the author that our most honorable present Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji also addressed the public and citizens, those who belong to India. Basically, they were addressed to have the cosmopolitan outlook, international outlook. If they have, or if they had to go to abroad for their materialistic, but basically they are Indian. It was suggested, addressed by our present Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji for the welfare of nation. Did these prejudices prevail only among the meanest and lowest of the people? Be excused, as they have few. And in fact, you will always find that those are most apt to boast of national merit, who have little or no merit of their own to depend on, than which, to be sure, nothing is more natural. The slender vine twists around the sturdy oak for no other reason in the world but because it has no strength sufficient to support itself. Those who are interdependent, they must show their interdependency. But our India today has become independent. It has proved that socially, physically, medically, commercially, at every level, our nation is independent, with having great varieties. Should it be at least in defense of national prejudice that it is the natural and necessary growth of love to our country, and that therefore the former cannot be destroyed without hurting the latter? I answer that this is a gross fallacy and delusion, that it is the growth of love to our country I will allow, but that is the natural and necessary growth of it. I absolutely deny. Superstition and enthusiasm too are the growth of religion. But whoever took it in his head to affirm that they are the necessary growth of this noble principle, they are, if you will, the bastard sprouts of this heavenly plant, but not its natural and genuine branches, but may safely enough be lopped off without doing any harm to the parent stock. Nay, perhaps till once they are lopped off, this goodly tree can never flourish in perfect health and vigor. It is not very possible that I may love my own country without hating the natives of other countries, that I may exert the most heroic bravery, the most undaunted resolution in defending its laws and liberty, without despising all the rest of the world as crowds and patrons, crowds and cowards and poltroons. Most certainty it is, and if it were not, but why need I suppose? But why need I suppose? What is the title of the ancient philosopher? But why need I suppose what is absolutely impossible? But if it were not, I must on. I should prefer the title of the ancient philosopher, namely, a citizen of the world, to that of an Englishman, a Frenchman, a European, or to any other affiliation, whatever. Dear friends, foreigners are being evaluated, and today in this modern time, we have become so interdependent on our social media, social platforms, through the electronology, technology, digitology, that our mind is not free to think openly and independently. We have become just the machine which is being interpreted by Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell, known for his humanitarian and anti-war ideals, was born on 18 May 1872. His works encompass a vast sphere of subjects, from logic, mathematics, and linguistics to philosophy of language, epistemology, and metaphysics. Russell's essays, written in a compact style, are often based on his discernments on moral or psychological issues. His major works include German Social Democracy, The Principle of Mathematics, Analysis of Mind, Introduction to Mathematical Philosophy, and History of Western Philosophy. What about the essayist, or about the essays? The essay Machines and Emotions is Russell's exposition of the prevalent industrial culture, which thwarts the emotional status of human beings. He explicates